Prehistoric. These small ancient figures, like the Venus of Willendorf, were likely less about art and more about function. They're often called fertility idols because of the exaggerated hips and breasts, but they could have been anything from good luck charms to teaching tools. They're portable, made from available materials like stone or bone, and the lack of facial features suggests they represent an idea, like survival or womanhood, rather than a specific person. Mesopotamian. Cultures like the Assyrians used sculpture to project power and tell stories. You see this in their large stone reliefs on palace walls. They often show kings winning battles or hunting lions, always looking strong and heroic. They also created imposing guardian figures called lamassu, bulls or lions with human heads and giant wings, to stand at gateways and intimidate visitors. The style is detailed, powerful, and a form of state propaganda. Egyptian. Egyptian sculpture was almost entirely about religion and the afterlife. They believed the spirit needed a place to live if the body decayed, so statues were built as a permanent home. That's why they used incredibly hard stone and carved figures in a rigid, forward-facing pose. It made them less likely to break. The consistent style, which lasted thousands of years, wasn't a lack of creativity. It was a sacred formula to ensure eternal life. Greek. The Greeks were obsessed with achieving perfection, and they used math and observation to do it. The big breakthrough of their classical period was contrapposto, where a figure puts its weight on one leg. This creates a natural-looking S-curve in the body and makes the statue feel relaxed and alive, not stiff. They were aiming to sculpt the ideal human form, a perfect balance of naturalism and mathematical harmony. Hellenistic. This is the period after classical Greece, and the style got way more dramatic. Artists were less interested in calm, perfect bodies and more interested in capturing intense emotion and action. You see figures in pain, dying, or in the middle of a struggle, like the famous Laocoon statue. The artists used deep carving and twisting poses to create a sense of chaos and high drama. It's sculpture designed to make you feel something intense. Roman. The Romans were practical. While they admired Greek idealism, their most original contribution was incredibly realistic portraiture, a style called verism. They sculpted their leaders and citizens with every wrinkle, wart, and receding hairline. They believed a person's face showed their character and experience, so this realism was a sign of wisdom and authority, not a flaw. Terracotta. Discovered in the tomb of China's first emperor, the Terracotta Army is a mind-blowing example of sculpture as a massive project. Thousands of life-sized clay soldiers, each with a unique face, were created to protect the emperor in the afterlife. It shows an incredible level of organization and a different approach to funerary art, not a single statue, but an entire army, ready for battle. Nkisi. From the Congo people of Central Africa, Nkisi are figures that are meant to house a spirit. They are not just statues to be looked at, they are ritual objects. People would drive nails, blades, or pegs into the figure to wake up or command the spirit inside, whether for healing, settling a dispute, or seeking justice. The accumulation of metal objects becomes a visible record of the sculpture's history and power. Gothic. Gothic sculpture is almost always part of a cathedral's architecture. To fit on the tall, soaring buildings, the figures themselves were often stretched out and elongated. They look more graceful and natural than earlier medieval styles, and their draped clothing gives a better sense of the body underneath. Their main purpose was to tell Bible stories to a largely illiterate population and guide people's thoughts toward heaven. Renaissance. The Renaissance was a rebirth of classical Greek and Roman ideas, but artists took them even further. They dissected bodies to understand anatomy, which allowed them to create incredibly lifelike figures. Michelangelo's David is a perfect example. It has the ideal body of a Greek god, but also the tense, thinking expression of a real human being. It's a celebration of human potential. Baroque. Baroque sculpture is all about drama, motion, and emotion. Artists like Bernini wanted to create a total, overwhelming experience. They captured the most dramatic split second of a story. This could be a saint having a holy vision, or a mythological figure caught in mid-transformation. They used swirling drapery, dynamic poses, and often mixed different materials to create a theatrical spectacle that pulled the viewer right in. Neoclassical. After the drama of the Baroque, tastes changed. Neoclassicism was a return to the clean, calm, and orderly style of ancient Greece and Rome. The sculptures are often made of smooth, white marble, with figures that look poised, rational, and emotionally restrained. It was popular during the Enlightenment, a time that valued reason and logic, and the art reflected that. Art Nouveau. This was a decorative style that flourished around the turn of the 20th century. Art Nouveau artists were inspired by natural forms, like the curving stems of plants, flowers, and insects. In sculpture, this translated to elegant, flowing lines and a focus on craftsmanship. It wasn't about deep meaning, but about creating beautiful, harmonious objects. Rodin. Auguste Rodin is often called the father of modern sculpture. He broke from the tradition of creating smooth, idealized heroes. His figures feel real and are full of raw human emotion, doubt, pain, passion. He often left his surfaces looking rough, so you could see the texture of the clay or the marks of his tools. He was more interested in capturing a person's psychological state than just their physical appearance. Cubist. Cubism, started by artists like Picasso, was about breaking things down and showing them from multiple angles at once. A Cubist sculpture might show you the front, side, and back of a person's head all at the same time. It's not meant to look realistic. It's an attempt to create a more complete, conceptual idea of an object, challenging the idea that we can only see something from one perspective at a time. Futurist. The Futurists were an Italian group obsessed with speed, technology, and the energy of modern life. Their sculptures tried to capture the feeling of motion. Boccioni's famous piece of a figure walking isn't just a static person. Its form is blurred and distorted, as if it's rushing through space. It's an attempt to sculpt dynamism itself. Dada. Dada was an anti-art movement that questioned everything. Marcel Duchamp famously took ordinary objects, like a bicycle wheel or a urinal, and called them ready-mades. By placing them in a gallery, he wasn't saying they were beautiful. He was asking, what makes something art? His point was that the artist's idea, the concept, was more important than the physical object. Brancusi. Constantine Brancusi was on a quest for simplicity. He would take a subject, like a fish, a bird, or a person's head, and strip it down to its most basic, essential form. His sculpture Bird in Space doesn't have wings or feathers. It's just a sleek, upward swooping shape that captures the pure idea of flight. It's about finding the essence of a thing. Giacometti. Alberto Giacometti's distinctive style emerged after World War II. His figures are incredibly thin, elongated, and have a rough, weathered surface. They often look lonely and fragile, as if they are being worn away by the space around them. His work is often interpreted as a powerful expression of existential anxiety and the isolation of the human condition. Kinetic. Kinetic art is, simply, sculpture that moves. Alexander Calder is the most famous example with his mobiles, which are delicately balanced constructions that spin and shift with the air currents. This introduced the element of time and change into sculpture. The artwork is never exactly the same from one moment to the next, creating a constantly evolving performance. Pop art. Pop artists look to mass culture for their inspiration, things like advertisements, comic books, and supermarket products. Sculptors like Claes Oldenburg made huge, soft sculptures of everyday objects like hamburgers, lipstick tubes, or payphones. The style uses humor and familiarity to comment on our consumer-driven society. Minimalist. Minimalism was a reaction against personal expression in art. Artists used simple geometric forms, like cubes and blocks, and industrial materials like plywood and steel. The idea was to create an object that was just an object, with no hidden meaning or emotion. It's meant to be straightforward, forcing you to think about the material, color, and how it relates to the space you're in. Installation. Installation art turns the entire room into the artwork. Instead of looking at a sculpture on a pedestal, the viewer can walk into, through, and around the piece. Artists like Yayoi Kusama, with her infinity mirror rooms, create immersive environments. The art is no longer just an object. It's an entire experience that you become a part of. Land art. Also known as earthworks, this is a movement where artists create sculptures out in the natural landscape, often using the earth itself as their material. Robert Smithson's spiral jetty, a massive coil of rock built into the Great Salt Lake, is a famous example. It blurs the line between sculpture and nature, creating art on a monumental scale that changes with the environment. So, that's a quick tour through the history of sculpture. It's crazy to think it went from representing gods to questioning what art even is. Which of these styles hit you the hardest? Let me know down below. Also, remember to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video.